bring us those critical extra TCF of gas. But we all need to work together to continue to educate the appropriate policymakers to ensure that Alaska is a place where companies can work. There's another point too. People in Chicago, and Omaha, and Minneapolis, and all those other cities and towns, and the farmers in the Midwest, they need to know why they want a pipeline. They need to know why it's important to them that our gas comes to the Midwestern domestic markets. So it would be useful for all of us in Alaska to think about how we're going to help explain to people, teach the folks and educate the folks in the lower 48 that this pipeline is important to them, not just to Alaska. There are also process-related issues. Permitting, environmental review, and consultations. You've all seen this slide before. It's pretty scary. There are 22 federal agencies, at least, that have a role to play. Oops. Just keeping track of these agencies and their responsibilities is a full-time job. The state of Alaska and the government of Canada also have approval processes that have to proceed alongside FERC licensing. Many of you are familiar with the FERC process, although it's somewhat new to Alaska for pipelines. It's very new for pipelines. ANCPA designates FERC as the lead agency for completing the environmental reviews, or the EIS, but it gives them only 18 months to do it. So that's 18 months after they have a complete application from the applicant. They only have 18 months to finish this huge EIS. And that EIS also has to be the paperwork and research and the analysis that is behind all of the other permits that go into making this pipeline possible. And the estimates are that there are around 60,000 separate permits, certificates, licenses, when you count every single stream crossing, every single piece of paper that has to happen before a pipeline can be built. So all of those things have to be analyzed and go into this EIS. And the EIS, of course, will work on both sides of the border. There's work to be done on both sides. So it's an enormous undertaking. And that's why FERC has said doing two EISs is inefficient. They are moving forward toward doing those, but it is going to take a lot of resources by the feds, also by the state, and by the government of Canada. This schedule, this 18 months, is extremely demanding. Here's the FERC pre-filing process and the environmental review process. For those of you who aren't familiar, again, you can study this when you're back at your desks and not watching ball games today. The check mark depicts the point at which Denali and TransCanada Alaska's latest timelines are expected to mesh. The boxes above the check indicate activities that each expect to complete within the next 24 months. Also want to note on the left-hand side in blue, those are the areas where there are public input opportunities. So those are the different times that there'll be public comment periods. And every agency will continue to have their own public comment periods for their processes, as well as the FERC public comment period. So you're going to have a lot of opportunities to attend meetings, listen, express concerns, express support, and help this project move forward. A major part of the FERC pre-filing process, what the companies are working on now, is completion of the FERC resource reports. The environmental resource reports constitute the environmental report portion of a FERC application. And FERC applications, by the way, are huge and extremely complex. It's similar to the information that's required by the Canadian authorities. Both applicants expect to complete their resource reports 1 and 10 before the end of the year or around that time as they prepare their open season packages, because they have to have a full explanation of their project, and as they get ready for open houses and scoping for the EIS. The last issue I want to talk about is also extremely important, and that's consultation. There are 2 separate requirements for consultation under the law. First, when the federal government permits a project that will impact Native Americans, or Alaska Natives, we are required to engage in government-to-government tribal stakeholder consultations with all directly or indirectly affected federally recognized tribes. And don't forget, there are 229 recognized tribes in Alaska. These consultations are crucial. They provide the forum to ensure that the impacted Alaska Natives' concerns are considered as the planning moves forward. In order to ensure continuity throughout the life of the project, FERC is writing a written government-to-government consultation plan that will serve the needs of all the federal agencies. We will provide oversight throughout the process to ensure that the plan is followed. FERC has recently distributed a draft to the federal agencies of their Denali government-to-government consultation plan, since Denali is the company that is before them in pre-application process. The agencies are going to comment back to FERC by April. That first plan designates which tribes are the directly affected tribes, and there will be an opportunity both for tribes to opt out, as did happen during TAP's right-of-way renewal, or for tribes to appeal to be actually included in that final list of directly affected tribes. Congress did not direct a Title 29 type native hire requirement in any of the legislation that has passed so far for the gas pipeline. However, many miles of village corporation lands and regional corporation lands, especially between Delta Junction and the border, will be traversed by the routes, both of the line itself, but also access roads, the material sites and things. So certainly the ANSCA corporate, village corporations in particular, will be at the table in a way that they weren't, frankly, during TAPs, during construction, or even right-of-way renewal, as well as the tribes being there. The second federal agency requirement is the Cultural and Historic Resource Analysis and Consultation. The National Historic Preservation Act of 1966 created the National Register of Historic Places and the Section 106 review process. The Section 106 consultation ensures that preservation values for cultural and historic properties are factored into federal agency planning and decisions. FERC is also the lead agency for Section 106 review. And I will tell you something that you probably didn't know that we're just starting to get our own arms around, and that is the fact that in the TAP's right-of-way renewal documents and during the railroad extension EIS that's presently being done by the Surface Transportation Board, TAPS has been said to be eligible to become a historic property when it is 50 years old. So there's going to have to be a discussion about what that means. Do we have to protect the viewshed? What do we have to protect about TAPS? Some people have said, oh, that means maybe we don't have to do DRNR, and Richard Feinberg, wherever you are, it's going to upset you when you hear that. But I don't think that that's where this is going to go. But we are going to have to engage in a discussion that we haven't engaged in before as we go through this consultation process of figuring out what it is we're going to protect about both the tourism opportunities in Alaska. Not only are we going to disrupt traffic during construction, clearly, and the infrastructure pre-builds, but what do we have to protect about TAPS? Along that 800 miles, is it okay just to protect the area in Fairbanks where all the visitors go see TAPS and other places where it's along the road, or do we have to protect the whole 800 miles? That's a discussion we're all going to have to be involved in now that it has been deemed eligible to become a historic property. The railroad actually, or Windy at least, didn't realize either that in their EIS, the TAPS, between Fairbanks and down to Delta, is also being analyzed whether or not it's eligible to become an agricultural landscape, and that's a different designation. But if they're an agricultural landscape, if you go find what that means, it actually adds some additional viewshed restrictions. Now, obviously the gas line can't really decide where to put compressor stations along the route because the tourist might not want to see a compressor station. So we are going to have to work through that process. It's complex in the best of times. This is going to add a new wrinkle that we haven't dealt with before, and frankly hasn't been dealt with in the lower 48 on a historic property of the magnitude of TAPS, 800 miles worth. So it's just another discussion we're going